Yeah, so for those joining us on Facebook, we've just been watching a short documentary on forest gardens, and I've invited everyone to just get into small groups of 3 to just see what they learnt and share some ideas and things, and I'm going to invite them to start feeding back. So what did you learn about forest gardens? So who'd like to feed back from group 1? So who was in?
I have no idea what group number I was, sorry.
So group 1 was Caroline, Rajesh, Sheep and Zoe.
Yes. I think we started off with some for Nijmegians local tips. So in this case there was like a food forest nearby in Groesbeek, it's a place next to Nijmegen, with a local person who's really awesome and very enthusiastic, and also collaborating with a restaurant. It's totally awesome, really nice guy. Then I think we went to let's see, that one of us was surprised that the carbon can be actually stored in the ground by fungi. Then someone said like, oh, I really learned like from this documentary that the Soviet Union actually made their own trees, and then we discussed a bit like it's really strange that you never get taught this kind of thing, and then you always have like the snippets, and this kind of is like a trail, and this trail leads to other awesome things. No, that was like the end. That was like the end. And let's see, I guess the amount of varieties of food was also like, wow, like there's so many, like 400, and we just eat like a few of them. How is this possible? Do I forget something?
Great. So yes, let's pick up some points there. So so first of all, his plot of land is 0.8 hectares, so 2 acres. And in his particular place, he was growing 550 different species of plants, many of which were edible. And I think what the documentary said was that our closest relatives, the orangutans, eat something like 400 different varieties of plants. And so they're frugivores, and which is, when we look at our bodies and our digestive systems, etc., we're also designed to be frugivores mainly, which is predominantly fruit and nut eating, predominantly, but not exclusively. But then we can vary things up as well, but predominantly designed to eat mostly fruits and veg. And whereas most people in the industrialized world probably only eat something like 20 to 30 different varieties of fresh fruits and vegetables. I think that's what he was saying. So that's quite purely from an energetic, from a health perspective, in terms of all the micronutrients that we need. That's quite that's quite problematic. So just in my little forest garden here, something like when I first started it, I know in the first 2 years, in the second year we counted 156 different edible things from that garden, and we're talking about just a small back garden in East London. Right now, it was then abandoned for about 7 years, and I've just come back because of COVID, so I'm here now. And without putting any real effort in, well, I'm now starting to put some effort in, but still eating the majority of things which are perennial. I'm getting about 50 to 60 things from the perennial, plus maybe another 5 or 10 of things that I've just seeded or planted as well. So yeah, so that's really a significant difference. And going back to, I think you mentioned about carbon sequestration. I'm sure many of us are familiar with with what's going on in terms of the world, climate change, etc. And carbon sequestration is probably one of the most important parts of the things that we need to correct. And trees themselves, play a huge part. Just having more trees will lock in and sequester carbon in several different ways. They will also create all kinds of other things, which, let's see, hopefully other people will start picking up on those things, and yeah, let's see where we get to. So yeah, so wonderful. Thanks very much for that summary. So breakout room 2, which was Chris, Ruth, and Yogamaya and Mahindra. Who's feeding back from that group?
Me. Hiya. Yeah, so we went around the room, so to speak. I talked about the food cropped aspect, the edibles. Like if you're having, we're so used to, if we do grow, have courgette and we know what to do with it. So there's the sort of question, if you've got a forest garden, of how, as you've got your community involved, how do you talk to them about the different ways you cook with different plants, how you can eat them, what they go with, what they don't go with. Because I know there's stuff in my garden that I'm not so keen on eating, greens usually. But it's that, how do we get that into our diet? As I said, if we're so used to eating 20 plants, then if you've got hundreds, it's getting them as part of a system to get people back to a more seasonal way of eating as well. So that was my sort of take on it. Chris was talking about the exotic plants and the emphasis on this sort of non-natives within the forest garden, and how that works with community growing again. How do we, I think it went back to how do we get it to the stuff that's grown locally, native, and again, I think there's looking at how you're working with people and how they feel about it. We also talked about, that Mahendra talked about the sort of quantities of people who could be fed with an acre, and how important the fungi was, and all its roles. I think this is another aspect of it, the sort of how the different levels of crops work or plants work with each other. And then Yogamaya was also talking about the numbers of different plants, and yeah, just how amazing how many different species you can have. So that's sort of a general roundup.
Fantastic, brilliant, good feedback. So so let's take a look at some of those things. So first of all, the whole idea of what we grow in a forest garden is quite often different to what is grown in a conventional garden. So why is that? Why is it that we don't have tomatoes and potatoes and pumpkins and things like that growing so easily in a forest garden? The main reason is because the amount of nutrients that they require. If we imagine the majority of the foods that we eat, first of all, the other one you talked about is exotics versus non-exotics. So if we didn't have exotics, we wouldn't have tomatoes, we wouldn't have potatoes, we wouldn't have corn. So most of the foods that we are eating right now, if we were to ban all exotics and only have natives, we'd be eating what? Probably crab apples. We wouldn't even have proper big apples. We'd have crab apples and really tough wild carrots, which are barely edible. So the majority of what we would be eating would be just little berries and things, and and whatever wild grains we might find. So it's a little bit, I mean, the whole subject of exotics, there's other reasons as to why we do need to consider the balance between exotics and non-natives, or natives and non-natives. But first of all, let's look at the whole idea of this new diet. But it's actually not such a new diet insofar as our ancestry would have known many of these plants. It's only because of industrialization and because of the role of supermarkets and the media that we have narrowed down our what we eat, and the fact that they can ship things in. I mean, it's really crazy if you think about it. The amount of apples that we import into England is roughly the same amount as we export out of England. Why? Because we want apples all year round. We want in February we still want golden delicious apples. So all right, so we're going to have to import them from from the other side of the world, or have them irradiated or frozen or whatever, so that by the time they get here they kind of look like they're okay to eat and what have you. So yeah, whereas, as I say, our ancestry would have worked out how to, with the minimal amount of food that was in whichever region you're living in, how to make it last throughout the entire year. And as I say, if we look at it, the actual nutrients that we get from these foods that are local, that are in season, is so much more vibrant, especially those coming from a forest garden, because in a forest garden we have got the whole cycle of nature is basically creating richness. We're encouraging animals and birds and insects and bacteria and things into our spaces and into creating the most magical soil. So the soil itself has life, and so therefore the plants that grow in this soil have also have energy. They have nutrients. They have they have this vitality that if we eat it fresh means that we only need to eat not even half of what we're currently eating, so we can massively reduce the amount of food that we eat but still get more nutrients and more energy. And because we're not eating as much and taking up so much of our energy just processing and digesting the food, it means that we have much more energy left for the rest of life. So we don't need to be sleeping 8 to 10 hours a day and wake up all groggy and I have to have my coffee before I'm awake or before I can even go for a poop. I mean, what is that all about? Like, the most natural thing that every single animal can do, somehow us humans, because of our dietary habits, we can't go to the toilet until we've drunk something that doesn't even grow in our region, that grows because of child slavery in another part and child abuse in another part of the world. What a crazy scenario we're living in. So we as the price of fossil fuel starts to go up, the actual cost, and the only reason we can actually afford to eat the price of food is only what it is right now because of subsidies and because of exploitation of people in other parts of the world. As soon as that exploitation starts to become unethical, or rather as soon as we start to recognize this, and rather than just say, oh, isn't that a bad idea, perhaps that shouldn't happen, but hey, I'm still going to go and buy that stuff anyway because it's cheaper. As soon as it starts to become to the point where we say, actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to live in a world where I know that my food has come from exploitation of other people. As soon as we stop importing so much of this because of exploitation, we're going to have to start learning, and as soon as the subsidies stop, all of a sudden we're going to start trying to find out the real, true cost of food. And then you'll see actually organic food is actually quite cheap compared to other forms. Once we start taking all the subsidies and everything away and the exploitation away, we'll actually see the real cost. And so now the more local we make our food, the more we grow it as communities, the better the chance we have of really feeding ourselves in a really rich way. So so many things there. Sorry, maybe I've gone a little bit too long on that. So I'm going to hand over to the next groups. Thank you very much for your feedback. So that's the group with Andrea, Jake and Louise. Who's feeding back from your group?
I am. Am I there?
Wonderful. Go for it, Jake.
Oh yes, I had a great time actually, and it's quite funny. I think with the Andrea very helpfully summarised it. Community forest gardens, they're actually a really good place, and it's about learning and sharing the information as much as about the actual produce. It's about sharing the information and different ways of living, which kind of chimes with a lot of what I've been thinking about recently. It's adding information to there's a list of plants and there's a list of what you can eat and the benefits of it. There's also the involvement of people in the process is as important. And then yes, about talking about the size of the garden, which didn't come across in the film, but is the idea that a forest garden can be a small space. It doesn't have to be a large space. So that's what Louise kind of mentioned. Mm-hmm. So it's I thought that was it was good fun. It was great.
Wonderful, great. Thanks very much. So his forest garden is on the grounds of it's in Dartington. It's in the grounds of the Schumacher College. That's it. So he's got 2 acres of land, but his is really experimental. Whereas if you look at the first forest garden that was made here in the UK and the first in Europe, that was a lot smaller. That was by Robert Hart. My back garden is, I think, 77 square meters, and then I've now got an extra second plot as well, which is more or less the same. So I've got 2 plots, roughly 100 and let's say about 150 square meters, and so so it can be as small or as large as necessary, but yeah, the community forest garden, wow, that's really fascinating, and maybe we'll come on to covering that in a little bit more detail at the end, because this is my real passion, and as you've already beautifully identified, some of the benefits of a community forest garden is not just the food, but it's the whole inspiration that you can give other people when growing in this way. And yeah, maybe we'll come back to that towards the end and look at that in a bit more detail. Wonderful, thanks very much, Jake. So George, Hannah, Jess and Rak, who's feeding back from your group?
That's me. We spent quite a bit of time at the beginning just getting to know one another. I know that wasn't the objection,
That's
but
cool.
And then we went on to Martin Crawford's forest garden, and we talked about the bamboo. We were quite fascinated that the bamboo grows 20 centimeters a day, and after removing the skin, it's edible. Quite interesting. And talked a bit about nitrogen fixing trees, although we don't really know much about that. We're still learning. And yeah, what we can do with our own little gardens and creating a community, because that's where we would all be able to connect with each other and use our resources and expertise and work together. So yeah, that's where we were at.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's just explore what you're saying about the bamboos first of all. So there are lots of different types of bamboo in the world. What we know is anything that is in the Philiostachys family of bamboo are all edible. Luckily, here in the temperate climate, especially here in the UK, the only bamboos that will grow outside are in the Philiostachys family. So pretty much any bamboo that you see growing here in the UK in outdoors is going to be edible. Now some of them are more bitter than others, so some need much more preparation. So the ones I've got in my garden, which is lutea, is Philiostachys lutea, is I eat it raw. I don't need to cook it because it's so mild. And I think, if I remember rightly, even in May, I can't remember, I know it was really late in the year, I was still eating them really late in the year. So normally you've got about a month, you'll watch it grow and you'll allow it to grow to something like half a metre, something like that. You'll dig down a little bit and cut it from a little bit further underneath the soil, and then you get a nice decent amount of flesh from it. And you can taste it and you can see how bitter it is, and if it is bitter, as you say, you just cook it, steam it, and it loses its bitterness. So a really easy one. So different bamboos will grow to different sizes and different heights and different widths. But the good thing for us is they're all edible in this country. One thing to look out for, I've gone to many people's houses, you know, when I've told them this, and they brought out, oh look, here's my lucky bamboo. And so there's, I don't know if that happens all around the world, but certainly here in England there's this thing that is not even a bamboo. I think it's a Dracarea or something like that. Anyway, it's an indoor plant that is labelled lucky bamboo, which is not a bamboo, so please don't try to eat it. It's poisonous. I'll see if I can figure out the real name for it, but if it's lucky bamboo, it's not a bamboo, so don't try eating it. What else? You were talking about nitrogen fixing was the other thing. So all plants need nitrogen in order to grow and put on leaf. And I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to pretend. I've looked at these pictures so often, and I don't remember all these numbers. But those who are more scientifically inclined, you can look online and figure out the actual facts. But nitrogen is freely available in the air, but in a particular state. And I can't remember whether it's called a nitrate or this, that, the other. If someone else wants to correct me, those who've studied biology or chemistry, please feel free to do so. But it's in a form that no plant can ever absorb. Apparently the bonds are so strong that there's nothing in the plant or animal or even fungi kingdoms that can break them apart, and therefore make those molecules, the nitrogen molecules, available to our plants. So there's two ways in which nature can do this. Sorry, I made a mistake when saying no bacteria, because there are some bacteria that can, but there's no plant that can absorb it. So one way is when during lightning strikes. So when there's thunder and lightning, the energy is strong enough to break these bonds. And so what you see after a thunderstorm, you'll actually see this leafy green kind of growth, because all that excess nitrogen that is freely available in the air is being broken down and made available to plants. Which is where, bombs and explosions, which is how and why, I'm sure many of us know the story of how after World War II, all, the leftover of the bomb making industry was basically diverted. All right, what do we do with all this stuff? Oh, I tell you what, we can make we can put it into farming, and we can make it into nitrogen, NKP, and give it to the farmers to make food grow quicker, and so on and so forth. So the other way that plants can get access to this is when there's particular bacterias, and there's two families. There's the Rhizobium family and the Frankia family. And the Rhizobiums, there's many different type. Rhizobia, I don't know what the correct term is, whatever it is for multiple. But they, and each family, so many people will know alfalfa and field beans and different plants which will fix nitrogen, clover and so on and so forth. Well, that is true, but the amount of nitrogen they fix compared to other plants is actually quite negligible, or there's a big disparity between different plants. So for example, the amount that a field bean will fix, i.e. make available to other plants, is so much smaller compared to alfalfa. Alfalfa is the absolute king of nitrogen fixing. But the biggest problem, though, or there's two problems with relying on this family for nitrogen fixing, is the different families of bacteria work with different types of plants. So just because you're growing alfalfa doesn't mean you're fixing nitrogen if you don't have the right type of rhizobium in your soil. So it's very hit and miss. Also, most of these plants require a lot of sun. So as you saw in a forest garden, it's got, the sunny places are a little bit of a premium. So yeah, so we need to be, yes, this is not the greatest way to fix nitrogen in a forest garden. Whereas things that rely on Frankia, there's only one type of Frankia, and there's one, and all of the trees and shrubs and perennial plants utilize Frankia to fix nitrogen. So you're almost guaranteed to fix nitrogen and make that nitrogen available. And as I say, it's an absolute essential part of a forest garden, is to get your nitrogen fixing trees in there. There's a few other things that we also must get, but that's, you asked about nitrogen, and that's mainly what you need to know. So the main thing you need to know is to get nitrogen fixing trees and shrubs that work with Frankia, and you're guaranteed then to be fixing nitrogen for the rest of your plants. Sorry, again, I was a little bit long on that explanation. Next group is Hannah and Vikashini. I'm not sure who else was in that group. Perhaps someone dropped out.
We were only with the two of us. So we also talked about the bamboo, but then more about how strong it always is, and that we were a bit surprised that there was so much within the forest.
Okay.
And we talked about the fungi and how they are like secretly overall going everywhere and helping everyone out.
This is the most fascinating part of forest gardening. The most fascinating part is how the fungi moves around all of your nutrients. So basically fungi can pick up nutrients, as was said in the documentary, from almost any plant. In fact, everything that you throw at it, it will just say, hey, okay, I'll take some of this, I'll absorb some of it, and I'll move, and I'll see what I can do with it. So, in this way, you can, because it has this ability to lock up things, it can be used to do all kinds of things like cleaning poisons. If you've got heavy metals and things in your ground, the fungi can actually lock it in and hold it and store it, and it will only pass it on to plants that say, hey, yeah, some arsenic, yeah, I'll take a bit of that. Oh, lovely. Oh, a bit of mercury, no problem, give me, so if a plant kind of is in a position where it can absorb and utilize it, then it will pass it on. But if so if the plant is asking for it, if the plant has a lack of nitrogen, or it has a lack of potassium, or a lack of phosphorus, or a lack of magnesium, zinc, copper, whatever, and the fungi has it, the fungi will make that exchange. So you don't need to worry about the quality of your soil. You don't need to do soil testing to see, do I have enough magnesium, do I have all these what do they call them, micronutrients, because as long as it's somewhere in your realm, within the boundary of your forest garden where your fungi goes to, it will get moved around to the plants that need it. One caveat is it will only do that for perennial plants, because most annual plants do not have a symbiotic relationship with fungi to be able to make that exchange. So if you plant tomatoes and carrots and potatoes and things, they won't get those nutrients. They'll just behave in the normal way, i.e. they'll just take the nutrients from wherever their roots can grow. So there's a different way in which, if we want to grow annuals in our forest garden, which we absolutely can do, there's another way that we need to think of to give them the nutrients, because the fungi is not going to do that work for them. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. So next group is Joe, Jonathan and Sylvie. Who's speaking from your group?
I'm going to talk for our group.
Wonderful.
It was very interesting. We had Joe in there who actually visited the forest garden not only once but several times. And with I think also 10 years ago, when that video was actually shot. And she was already back then amazed about the things he had to teach and like what's growing there. And like she really thinks that is her thing, like the information he shares, she gets so fascinated and passionate about. And yeah, like I thought it was really cool to have someone in the group. I actually visited that place. My assumption about the video was right. I mean, I didn't think it would be that one. Haven't seen that one, but I saw another one of Martin Crawford, and I thought it would be him because all the documentaries about him were a bit shorter, not like an hour or so long. And I was actually having a lot of kind of indirect questions about the movie because every time I watch a documentary about this forest garden of his, the temperate climate zone, is where does he get his caloric needs from? Like, I don't know if they only come in the wrong time of the year, like they come in nothing fruit-wise is fruiting or like something that is more calorically dense. You see greens everywhere and things that are high in fiber. But I mean, if I would eat only that, I wouldn't be there anymore in a couple of months or years. Like I need more. Like I know you get a lot of nutrients from that, but also you need like fruit or some more sugars and things. And I've never seen anything like a fruit there, or even nuts for that matter. So yeah, I'm wondering where all that comes from.
Okay.
In that, and I got familiar with food forests in a tropical system where obviously you have a lot of calorically dense foods like bananas and mangoes. But yeah, and then Jonathan, who is very familiar with permaculture and has his own system, but is slowly getting his head around also forest gardens, and for him it's also new. His connection wasn't very strong, so he couldn't, and I think time was running out as well, so he couldn't share as much. But yeah, it was interesting to have this group, like just to have someone in the group that was there and visited it and saw it with her own eyes.
Okay, wonderful. So yes, I've also been to his forest garden probably about 10-15 times, including 10 years ago also. So I've seen it grow, I've seen it mature. And so first of all, in his actual first of all, he's got two plots. He's got a second plot, which is actually a nut orchard. So this is where he has all his sweet chestnuts. This is where he has all of his, different heart nuts and this, that, and the other. But in this particular garden, there are different types of apples and pears. There are, I mean, there is a lot of fruit. I've been at different times of the year, including winter. But certainly in the summer and what have you, there is plenty of fruit. You have lots of different. A lot of different berries, everything from Japanese wine berries to Nepalese raspberries to like Cornus masses, different types of dogwoods and things like that. So so there is a diversity, and the key thing about his forest garden is his is all about experimentation. So whereas okay, in my garden, what have I got? So I've got apples, I've got cherries, I've got mulberries, I've got Worcester berries, Joster berries, black currants, red currants, loads and loads of different types of currants, including chocolate berries. Then lots and lots of greens. Then I've got, in terms of tubers, I have things like sweet potatoes, I have fartichokes. What are fartichokes in English? Jerusalem artichokes, that's it. I've got lots of burdock, non-stop supply of burdock. I've got salsifis, again really good strong root vegetables. And I mean there is a diversity, and this is something that that I'm getting without continuous work to make it happen. So the things that I planted this year were potatoes and tomatoes, mainly because friends, locals, just gave me stuff. When they saw I was back, they said, "Hey Rakesh, would you like some? I've got some seedlings. Would you like?" Okay, sure. Boom, in they go. And a huge amount of greens. So we definitely can get more calorific things in there. So I know you're part of our vegan food calculation project, so yeah, we can evolve that and we can start seeing how within, yeah. So basically anyone who studies with me joins our network, the Roots and Permaculture network, and we have about 20-25 different projects going on, one of which is to calculate to look at the nutrient requirements for a typical person who happens to be vegan, if you want to maintain a vegan lifestyle, and to see where we get these nutrients from, and so that we can then start making designs to see what can we grow at which times of the year, and what can we do to prolong, how do we preserve them, do we dry them, do we lacto ferment them, so that we can prolong the season, so that we've got nutrients throughout the year, so that we can then start seeing what quantities of things do we need to be growing in our forest gardens to really sustain, and how much of our food can we actually get from that. So that's something that anyone who studies with me can automatically join that if they're interested. So yeah, so we can actually, especially through nuts. Oh yeah, I've got hazelnuts as well growing. Especially through nuts and seeds and say root vegetables, we can kind of get that calorific value up. Wonderful. So I think there's 2 more groups. Hannah Marie, Dorota, and Joe Jikes. Who's feeding back from your group?
We spoke about a little bit about how amazing it was to see a really bushy forest garden. Some of them can be, quite manicured, but that this was very bushy. And beyond some chat, it was for one of us, it was the first time we'd seen a forest garden at all. So in itself, we were chatting about that quite a lot. But a few things that came up were the networks of fungi, and which you touched upon a little bit already, how it feeds different plants and transports nutrients. And also that fresh herbs like mint and oregano, how essential oils, things with essential oils can protect, work as a antifungal and antiviral part of the rest of the feeding into the canopy, which is quite amazing. And then yes, Joe, who's been in a lot of your courses, was surprised to see a real Szechuan pepper. Because that's something you spoke about a lot, and just it's not like a chili pepper, but an actual peppercorn.
Mm-hmm. But better. It's actually, I've been doing a lot of lacto fermentation, but with adding this into it, and it just wow. So I've just been fermenting sloes, blackthorns, Prunus spinosa, which most people will just walk straight past and not even think about eating because they're so disgusting. They're really astringent. But I'm collecting them, I'm harvesting them, and I'm lacto fermenting them with this Szechuan pepper, and oh my god! So anyone in Ilford, come over, try some of these. You'll be absolutely amazed. So yeah, what were you saying? You were saying about fungi, and what was your other subject?
And the fresh herbs.
Mint.
The essential oils connecting to the rest of the canopy.
Yes, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence to show how by planting mints and things in the allium family around your fruit trees, because of all the oils and the aromatics that both of them release, they actually really help to control the population of different bugs around your trees. So if you have these kind of things growing around your apple trees, for example, the chances of you having many bugs in your apples significantly reduces. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence, and I can say that in the 1 year where I did, or the 2-3 years when my parents were alive, when I had managed that side of it, I could 100% absolutely categorically say that that worked. And so it's about finding these right balances of different plants and herbs and things to really make, to support your trees. So if you look on YouTube, you'll see I did a video for, I think it was the National Forest Garden. So if you look on Roots and Permaculture YouTube, you'll find I've done a session on guilds and ground covers. In there it covers how we start approaching planting different annuals and how we start planting ground cover things that basically support the trees, to take care of the trees. Wonderful. So one more group, Christina and Manu. Who's feeding back from your group?
I think that's me. Yeah, most of the things we talked about have been covered already in the last group. I think things that we talked about quite a lot were, things that have been mentioned, but looking into the variety of things that are grown in a forest garden and thinking about not just growing things that are edible or useful to us as humans, but all the things that you just touched upon, like how different plants support each other and also pollinating plants. Just being fascinated by all the different ecosystems and all the different systems in general with the fungi and flowering plants and plants that you just mentioned, with certain oils and like all of these kinds of things. So we talked quite a lot about that. And then one of us had a concern about planting things that quite easily take over, and so we were discussing a little bit how you would control certain plants that would become dominating. Exactly. And that's all I've got to add from our group.
Great. So so you can balance out certain things with other plants that also like to take over, and just watch the game play out. So there's some things that maybe are so vigorous that you probably want to think twice. Personally, I really love ground elder, Agapodium, just from how incredibly versatile it is. You can eat the leaves, the stem. The stem is like a celery, but without any bitterness. Okay, it's smaller, but when you look at the quantity of how much grows and how quickly it grows, you've got celery all year round, or for a significant part of the year, and you put zero effort in to taking care of it. In fact, you want to keep chopping it back because it will grow so vigorously that it will just take over. So is that really a problem, that you've got way more celery than you could ever eat, and the amount of greens that you get from it? And then if you allow it to go to flower, the flower buds are also edible. I mean, wow, it's an amazing plant. So I was almost going to say eat it to death, but you don't want to eat it literally to death. You want to eat it, but just to keep it in check. And if you don't want to eat it all, ferment it, dry it, turn it into a plant protein. So in the winter you've got a really strong batch of vegetable proteins. So when other greens are not necessarily growing so strong. So it's all a case of proportion and balance. Wonderful. Okay, brilliant. So some really lovely stuff that's come up. Thanks very much for all those summaries. So maybe we've got 25 minutes left. So let's start thinking about community forest gardens. So now we can just go popcorn style. So anyone who wants to feed back on this, and it was so Jake in his group started to touch on community forest gardens. So what do we feel is the actual benefit of... Alright, in fact, let's just quickly recap on what the benefit is of a forest garden. So from my perspective, the benefit of a forest garden: very low maintenance, huge diversity of food, nutritionally dense food, which grows, and is much less susceptible to the change of weather. So I don't water my forest garden. I'm not a slave to my plants and have to go out there every day and oh sorry, there's a bit too much sun. There you go. Yeah, I'll take care of you. Don't worry. Whatever grows, grows. If it's not strong enough to withstand the crazy hot and the crazy wet rain and blah 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 in my garden, okay, no worries, die out. But because there's other things that will, and those strong things that will grow, these are the ones that really, they're tough, and they're so when whatever fruit they're going to give is going to be really vibrant and really strong. So as was said in the documentary, regardless of what's going on in the weather, the fluctuations of weather, the forest garden will adapt. Okay, so maybe one year you won't get cherries, but you'll get an abundance of apples. Maybe one year you won't get so many strawberries, but you will get lots of Worcesterberries and Josterberries, and you'll get lots of spinach and lots of other things. So it just balances out, and because they're perennials, it'll bounce back next year, and if next year is it has a different weather pattern, your forest garden will adapt. And so we know things like goji berries, we know how adaptable they are. So they depending on what's going on in your season, they will pick which time of year to fruit, and they will fruit whenever it's convenient to them, even twice a year, maybe twice a year is for sure I've seen, perhaps maybe even 3 times a year if the season is crazy enough. Raspberries also, I've got 2, from the same plants, I've got 2 crops of raspberries this year. Strawberries, sometimes I get 2-3 crops of strawberries throughout the year, and the forest garden will just adapt to your environment, and you're no longer a slave to it. You're no longer constantly having to think, oh, have I watered it? I need to seed it, I need to transfer it from this pot to another pot. Whew. Too much effort. Who has the time to do that? Let's enjoy life. And okay, maybe you enjoy doing that kind of work, but yeah, so sequestering carbon, cleaning the air, producing a real diversity of different foods, and therefore giving us different micronutrients to give us strength. Then wow, there's so many things we can get from a forest garden. Just the beauty of watching all the wild insects, watching, so this morning when I went to pick some raspberries for my breakfast, I saw 5 different types of bees, just in that 10 minutes. And just the joy of seeing this life in my garden is incredible. I could probably go on forever, but that's the joys of a forest garden. But how can we transpose that to what would be the advantage of making a community forest garden, a forest garden in a park or in a public space? What kind of joys now, what kind of yields can we get from that? Who'd like to say something? Who'd like to just pop your hand up or unmute yourself? And Zoe.
Sharing the abundance together, abundance of knowledge, abundance of food.
Absolutely, so as new people come, you can start explaining, oh well, look, this is a Szechuan pepper, oh, have you tried it? Oh look, it's still green, but try it like this. And the look on people's faces when they try Szechuan pepper for the first time, it's absolutely magical. Especially it changes flavor about 5 times, and it's like, oh, it's still going. Oh, now it's a bit like this. Oh, and then it starts numbing your lips and your tongue, and it's like, what's going on here? Wow, it's an experience. And we can start teaching people about how to use these herbs and how to start how to eat the different things that are coming, how to plant, how to propagate. I've got a cabbage in my garden that I've been growing for something like 35 years. And quite literally, when it's around something like 8 years old, it starts to die back. So around 5 years, I just break off a branch, stick it in the ground, maybe take a few, stick them in a few places, come back 3 months later, I've got new green leaves. Even in the winter, even when there's, I think I've got some photographs somewhere of when there's snow all around and the leaves are a little bit sad looking. As soon as the snow melts, boom, then they're growing again. They're growing again, and I've got green leaves all year round. So we can teach people about how to grow things like this, you know. So why are you spending that much time and effort growing cabbages and this and that and the other, and then the slugs eat all of them, and then you cuss about all the slugs. I've got slugs in my garden, but do you think they worry me? Absolutely not. I've got so much food. There's more than enough for the slugs as well. So they leave plenty behind that I can eat. And quite literally, I have greens. I've never bought greens since I came back from, you know, after COVID. Since I came back to England, I've not ever bought greens ever. I've got so many varieties of things that it's just unnecessary. And yes, I have slugs, but hey, no problem. So yeah, what else? What other yields can we get? You know, we can teach each other all kinds of things about food growing. We can teach each other about how to, you know, preserve foods, how to cook them, how to look after, how to preserve them, and all kinds of stuff. What else can we get from a community forest garden? So Ruth, and then Hannah from Edinburgh.
I think there's something really important about connecting within our community, about getting to know our neighbours, about food is something that we all eat. Most of us love food. Most of us love cooking or trying new things, and introducing people to growing, or even just saying, actually, you don't need to do much work, but you can observe and you can enjoy the space, you can connect with the space, but you can also connect with people in the neighbourhood. Particularly as a Londoner, we so, you know, move on so quickly, neighbourhoods change. But there's also a lot of, I've been speaking to people on the street, a lot of them said to me, oh, I've been here 20 years, I've been in my street 5 years, and I think, I haven't seen it. So we need to, creating community within growing is massively important, and I think, you know, those make strong communities as we face more of what COVID might bring, and if we face climate change, we will be facing it. Strong communities might better survival for everybody. Beautiful,
absolutely. So yeah, you know, everyone in this world needs to eat. So food unites us all. I mean, there's a few people who pretend to be breatharians, apparently. I've not actually met one who's actually really been a breatharian, but okay, there's a few out there who claim to be. So, but everyone else, apart from these few odd people, need to eat. It's the one thing that unites us. So we can bring all aspects of our communities out around food growing. And it's really amazing, you know, you go to different allotments, all the stuff that I've done with different transition towns, you know, in the different transition towns, let's face it, is still predominantly a white middle class activity in all of the meetings and all of the different activities, until you get to the food growing. And then you actually start a food. So they're not there discussing how the food growing is going to happen, but when you say, right, here's a place, let's do something, they're there. You've got the Bengali women, you've got the West Indian ladies, you've got the, you know, it's fantastic. It's like, and then you start talking to them, you know, I start talking to especially the West Indian ladies, start talking about medicine, about food, about, yeah, the different herbs. And because they're, you know, their grandchildren, what have you, or children even are not so interested. When you're all of a sudden interested, they just light up and they're so full of life, and they just want to tell you all about, and you mix a little bit of this and and cha, you know, I have a problem no more. Cha, so we are there, man. All right. And they're so excited, and you know, and you speak to the Bengali ladies about all the different vegetables that they're growing, and it's magic. It's really magic. It brings people together. So yeah, what better way to connect with your community, you know, but everyone, potentially anyone within your community, than around food. And yeah, really important point. Thank you very much. So I think Hannah, and then I think I saw Tish, and then Louise. So Hannah first, from Edinburgh.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's already kind of been said in all these things you've been saying, but yeah, a community space like that also kind of doubles up as really just a green space to kind of connect with other people and just use it as a sort of recreational, I suppose is the word, I'm not sure, but like, yeah, for all these other things that aren't necessarily like directly connected with, oh, this is a food growing space, but I love that it's, I don't know, it just doubles up. It's just like it's like an experience of nature, and then it's all these specific plants that are edible, and it's really, and it's very varied. That's
Varied.
the word. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so even, I mean, the great advantage of a forest garden is it takes a lot of energy to think it through, design it, implement it. So in the first few years, there's a fair amount of work, but then after that, the amount of work you need to put in just gets less and less and less and less, which means you have more time for fun and, you know, sharing and all the other things, which, if you look at the actual energy of people in projects, at the beginning of a project, everyone's like, yeah, do this, and everyone's, oh, great, lots of energy. And then someone leaves, you know, someone gets pregnant, and or someone's circumstances change. They're no longer in. They leave the area, or they change jobs, or, you know, circumstances. Life, you know, life happens. It happens. Wow. And so, because that key person left, and a few other key people then leave, and then all of a sudden the energy of the project just dwindles down. Whereas to keep an annual food growing project going, a lot of energy at the beginning, and then a little less, then lots of energy at the new year, and then a little less, then lots of energy. And you need to keep that constant amount of energy to keep it going. Whereas in a forest garden, it matches this human pattern. So can someone mute themselves, whoever's speaking in the background? So yeah, so you put a lot of energy at the beginning, and then over the years you put less, and you need to put less and less and less energy into it as it gets more and more mature. So it really matches people's energy well, and it means that then, you know, all the community things that Ruth was mentioning, all of a sudden they become much more tangible and much more important and much more feasible, because now we're just sharing stuff, we're sharing stories, we're sharing recipes, we're sharing, you know, whatever. Wonderful. So I think Tish, is Tish still there? Yes, she is. There we go. I think you had something to say, and then Louise.
Yeah, I couldn't get into the room.
Oh.
So I didn't manage. It just kept trying to connect, but it never could.
Oh, sorry about that.
But anyway, a couple of other things that we're doing with our forest garden. One is, apart from growing the vegetables, we're keeping honeybees there.
Okay.
As part of so we have a honeybee project. There's 3 of us sort of looking after the bees, but then we're bringing people up. We have enough suits, so lots of different people can come and have a look inside the hives. That side of thing. We're producing honey. We've had candle making workshops. They're different offshoots from the bees. Another thing we're starting this year is doing dyeing. We've got because we're part of a community garden was already established, and then which is a 7-acre community garden.
Wow.
We've got about an acre and a half, which is forest garden.
Okay. Can I ask you what things you're growing for dyes? You know, things like woad and, well, yeah, what kind of things are you growing for dyes?
It's a new project. We're going to be growing woad and madder. It needs sun, so we've chosen the south end of the garden, of the forest garden, where it's sort of connecting to the bit where people have got little plots and
Brilliant.
Communal growing, not as a forest garden. We've done a couple of dyeing workshops actually, gathering goldenrod and
Solid
dyeing yellow. So we'll be doing a mixture of using what we're actually growing.
Brilliant.
And and foraging.
I'd love to find out more, 'cause one of the projects that I'm going to start in this winter is at a local college in Walthamstow, to work with their art department and to create like a forest garden for some of the which the school kids will design and implement. But one of the yields we want to get from that is art materials, so dyeing and stuff like that is really, so things like Prunus spinosa, woads, solidargos and all those things. Fantastic. So yeah, so I'd love to pick up some tips from you guys. That would be amazing. So Louise, we've got about 9-10 minutes left, so let's start wrapping up. Louise.
I suppose one of the things that we haven't really touched on, but it's actually a great money saver. So if we can show people how they can grow stuff in their garden, or we've got the community garden and this and that can be grown there, it's a great, in this climate, if anyone can grow things and eat them in their garden and not have to be spending their hard-earned money, or struggling to get work and that sort of thing, I think that's a great benefit. So and it's difficult because allotments and that sort of thing are so difficult to get now. I think we can't even go on the waiting list now in Redbridge. They've actually closed the waiting lists, and they're a very the golden resource, aren't they, that developers are desperate to get their hands on. So
okay.
So that was my point, that it's we can teach people how to save money, basically.
Absolutely simple one. That's a really great door into it. So I get probably something like 80% of all my food from this garden, and okay, it is because I've changed my diet quite significantly. So yes, it is probably a good 70% are greens and fruits, and I probably only have grains maybe once a week, maximum twice a week, and lentils also maybe just once or twice a week. I did an iridology course. Someone looked at my eyes and said, your diet is actually amazing, except the one thing that's clogging you up is you're eating proportionately way too much lentils. Boom, it was in my eyes physiologically. Okay, thank you very much. So yes, I've cut that back, and yeah, it's made a huge difference. I've pretty much lost 10 kilos in the last since March. So I was technically obese, and now I'm well within my range of what I should be. Mainly because I've changed my diet to just eating stuff from my garden. So it saved me huge amounts of money. All I'm really buying are peanuts, to be honest. I kind of like peanuts with some chili powder and some melissa, sprinkled melissa, and I kind of someone said I pimp my peanuts, and that's my thing at the moment. That's my one luxury, my one I call it my junk food almost, because compared to the other stuff that I'm eating, peanuts are junk food. So yeah, I'm saving huge amounts of money on food. So
I think that's something we haven't really touched on, is the vegetarian stroke vegan issue. We want to obviously encourage people, and a lot of people think, well, where am I going to get my meat? And so that's sort of it's a great benefit that it will encourage people to consider vegetarian diet and more. But I suppose initially it's just to say to people, you can supplement your diet. You don't have to get everything from here, but eventually you would hope that they would start to think more like that. But that's something that we've got to change people's mindset perhaps a little bit if we can.
Yeah, so if we look historically back, I teach a lot in the Balkans and various other places, and most people will, when I ask them about their ancestors, their grandmother, ask their grandmother what she ate, when she was your age, and most of them will say, yeah, we only ate meat maybe 2 or 3 times a year, because we could afford to kill the pig in the village. We could afford to kill 1 or 2 a year, and then it was for a special occasion. So the amount of meat that people were eating in, you know, in our living memory was massively, significantly different to what we're eating now. And the only reason we can eat this much now is because of the destruction of the rainforests in parts of the world and exploitation of land throughout the world. And I think more or less every scientist has kind of come up with the same conclusion. We absolutely cannot continue to eat the amount of meat that we're eating right now. It has to change. If we want to save this species, if we don't want to go extinct, we really do have to change our dietary habits. So if we were to go back to that kind of, you know, that level of eating meat just occasionally, you know, that would make a massive, significant difference. If we could even cut it out all completely, you know, while that is my lifestyle is to be vegan, but I can't dictate that and force anyone else to follow that. But when we look at, you know, the environmental impact of eating meat and milk, the milk industry, you know, the two of which are absolutely linked. So if you're vegetarian and you're drinking milk and eating cheese, you're just as culpable in the murder of animals as if you are eating the meat itself, because of how the industry works. So, you know, it's what's that term? Cognitive dissonance, or whatever the term is. You know, you're fooling yourself if you think that you're not harming animals by drinking milk that comes from you know, industry, because you absolutely are. And there's 1,000 facts out there that kind of prove that. But just from an environmental perspective, it's something that we massively need to look at and change. Okay, we've got 3 minutes left, so I'm just going to wrap up, if that's okay. So yeah, so there's quite a few people here who are interested in creating food forests. So what I'll do is, I've got all of your email addresses because you registered. What I'll do is I'll send you some links of different things, so you know, so we can start seeing, well, who's in which area, so that we can see how we can start linking people up. But the main way in which I'm going to do this is I'm going to run a course which starts next Thursday on how to design forest gardens. So it's all by donation, so you know, anything from £10 to £40 per session, or whatever. If you can't afford that, just let me know, and that's also cool. So it's you know, I want to make it affordable for people. What I'm mainly looking for are people who are either interested in making designs of their own personal forest gardens, or more importantly for me is people who are willing to be part of a group to work together and create community forest gardens. So it's yeah, so the courses are Thursday the 3rd, 10th, 17th and 24th in the evenings. I think 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock UK time, so shift that by an hour, 7 to 11 in CET. And basically, yeah, so it's four evenings, and it gives you enough information to know how to design it. Then the idea is, through that course we will start connecting people together, and they'll go away and actually identify the places they want to design, and then I'll negotiate with each group what the next step is. But ideally what we would like to do is, maybe summertime around the winter, is to run another course where I walk you all through actually designing the place. So you actually go and make maps of the places you want to design. You do whatever soil tests and things, whatever, you know, rocks your boat, whatever you feel you need to do. You gather the information, you start talking to people around to see what they want from it, so that we can then start walking you through actually making a real design. So I will help you to make your forest garden, but not just me helping you, we will all help each other to make our forest gardens. And one thing that we need to be a little bit careful of is, I see a lot of people making forest gardens which in my opinion are not really strong forest gardens. So they think that just by planting a tree, I think someone mentioned it earlier on, how many forest gardens they've seen are really sparse. I think maybe it was Hannah, or yeah, actually I can't remember who it was, but they were saying, wow, isn't it great to see a forest garden that's actually full of things, because they see normally a tree and a few little things growing around it. And very often you'll see that they haven't done the nutrient calculations. They planted things too closely together and they haven't got things growing really well underneath. And what you typically see is that many of these run out of nutrients very quickly, or they start shading each other out, and therefore they stop working. So after about 5 years, after 5 years they start to fruit well. For maybe another 5 years they're going well, and then after that they're finished. They're so crowded out that almost nothing is growing. So many people are just thinking just planting some trees and planting a few things underneath it is forest gardening. It's not. There's a lot more to it than that. Luckily for us, it is actually very, very simple. There are very simple patterns that I can show you, that I can walk you through, that will help us to avoid making these mistakes that many people seem to do. It is actually very straightforward. And hopefully many people have commented to say that the way in which I teach it, even for people who don't really know much about plants and things, can very quickly get this understanding. So if you either do want to make a forest garden yourself, if in your own garden, or you want to be part of a group to actually make a community forest garden, if you want to be one of the people who actually actively designs that and co-creates it, I would strongly recommend you join this course. As I say, if money is an issue, just come and talk to me. Money should never ever be an issue for people to come on my courses. So let's just make a deal, and whatever you say, that's cool, you're on. Because what I want people who are really passionate to make things happen, so that we can really truly make things happen. So that's my invitation. I'm really, really happy that so many people are fascinated with this, because this is really one of my biggest passions in life. I've got many passions in life, but this is really one that just gives me so much joy, and so much joy to share with other people. And so I'll also be coming to the Netherlands in end of September to do some little workshops on collaborative working. So maybe we can collaboratively work on designing a forest garden, maybe even in Nijmegen or Arnhem or wherever. Let's make it happen. Let's get this going wherever. Let's get stuff happening up in Scotland, in Chesterfield, in Norwich, in wherever. Let's all, as I say, we're here. Let's help each other. Let's just help each other to make this really exciting, beautiful world full of life, full of love, full of insects and bugs and just joy and beauty. Because let's face it, this is a really beautiful world that we're living in. It's only humans that for somehow seem to want to destroy that and turn that natural beauty into something like a living hell, and I have no idea why. So let's turn that around, and let's make this world a paradise again, and in the process of doing so, grow food, support each other, and let's just make it happen. And really happy that you're part of that, and look forward to seeing you wherever, whenever. So thanks a lot, everybody. Really great to see you all. Thanks for a great turnout. Lots of love. Big hugs. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Have
you.
fun.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.